you're now looking at leadership, and I really want to focus on two words you used in your last set of remarks that were both very powerful for me. The first one was leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and the second one was character. So, how do you get to a definition of leadership, and then how does character and first of all get defined, and how does that inform leadership in your estimation?
Well, we all have the opportunities to be leaders, and sometimes it's thrust upon us, and sometimes we are part of a group that can lead. I have always been a glass half full type of person. I have never looked at a situation and not thought about the fact that I can rally the troops and we're all going to run up that hill together. And for me, that is empowering yourself to be a leader. But the other element of leadership is knowing how to behave professionally and knowing how to act within the moment. A leader is not a heavy-handed individual, although there are going to be times we all have stress in our lives where you may not act the way that you feel always positive about how you acted. But a leader is someone who you prop them up. One of my staff members always says, he goes, Lisa will push you and push you and push you, and then she'll pick you up, she'll give you a hug, she'll dust you off, and she'll send you up again. And so for me, that's one element of it. And that's the second piece. I talk about character, and again, it's the empathy. Character is not only having a very strong moral compass, but one of the things I always stress, whether you're in government, a nonprofit, or in a business, you have to remember that you are responsible for the spending of other people's money. If you're in government, you're spending the taxpayers' money. If you're in a nonprofit, you're spending the donors' money or the activist money. If you're in a business, you have shareholders. People are buying your products. They're your customers. And you should never put your own personal position, what's in it for you, above the people whose money you are some way, shape, or form touching the spending of that money. And I am always stunned at the hubris I discover when I go into turnaround situations. And what I discover is when someone is led by their own ambition and they forget that they are a temporary steward of the institution they serve. That institution goes on beyond them, but somebody's giving you a paycheck because that's what you were a steward of. And so you have to comply with the rules that are established within the organization. And I fundamentally believe if people do that, in addition for understanding the point of view of someone else, the impact of their actions on another person, that will build the characters of leadership that we need in order to run up those hills and be successful.
So it's interesting that you say that, because you're using terms I think are more substantive and affirming than the way that others might address the topic. And by that, what I mean is, what I just heard you say is, which I think is, again, very powerful. You're a temporary steward of the institution you serve.
You are. We all die. We all end. We all take jobs. We all leave jobs. We're only here for a period of time.
but that's different from in my world, a private equity guy, a private equity person coming in and saying, yeah, we got to implement cost controls. Right. So ultimately they have similar functions, but by describing it in the way you do, you're touching the moral compass of the individual with whom you're speaking at a different level. You're engaging them differently. It's a whole person engagement. It's not just flipping the circuit breaker in a person's brain around financial controls, but rather, no, it's more than that. It's not just a financial control issue. And it's funny because that is the way that I was raised inside of EDS, which is a company that was founded by Ross Perot and carried on for almost 40 years before being acquired. But the leadership strength that comes through that kind of a dialogue is what distinguishes really, really formidable, high quality leaders from their contemporaries, but also, in my view, humbly, allows for the sustainability of the very values you're creating in the organization. In other words, I'm still using aphorisms I learned at EDS 30 and 40 years ago. But if I had said, hey, we need to put in cost controls, it wouldn't have nearly the emotional integration that I have with the idea of the comment you just made, which is we are all temporary stewards of the institutions we serve. And the fact that I've now recited that twice without having ever heard you say it before just shows how powerful that is.
And it also gets into the fact that cost controls are a moral activity. And some people see them as an immoral activity because, again, it impacts people, right? There's always something, there's always a thing that's going to be impacted. But that institution is not going to survive unless those cost controls are put into place. It will be unable to fulfill its ultimate mission. And I tell people a lot of times, I say, go back to your bylaws, go back to your founding documents. Why did somebody start this institution? Why did they start the business? What problem were they trying to solve? Why did they start the not-for-profit? Why did you start the church that you started? Why did you start this government program? It had a purpose. But what happens is that when we continue to put our own self-interest on a day-to-day basis in front of the purpose for that institution, it will be unable to fulfill its ultimate objective. And, my dad taught me, and I really, so much of the book talks about things I learned from my father, but he always taught me, he goes, you need to be able to walk out the door at any point in time. One, because somebody may make you walk out the door, so you're not going to have a choice in the matter. Or two, because it's time for you to leave and pass the mantle of leadership. And so the most important thing for you to think about is if that happens, whether because they make me leave or because I choose to leave, will all that hard work that I have done for that institution continue to thrive upon my departure? And as you said, I announced my retirement from FAIR in the spring of 2022. It's 8 months away, possibly. But one reason I did that is that I want to ensure that everything we did, we just went through a massive restructure. We traveled a lot. We raised a lot of money. We've accomplished wonderful objectives. I want the next person to come in to take the organization to an even higher level of performance. I want that person to have even more experience than I do. I know that I am not the ultimate leader of bringing FAIR to where it needs to be, but I am highly focused on wrapping it up in a blue box. I say, like the blue Tiffany's box with the big bow on top. I want it to be perfect when I walk out the door, because at that point, they will continue to accelerate progress. I don't want to leave something for somebody to fix. I want progress to continue. And I have a school in the book. I talk about a school that I helped start. It was one of the very first partnerships between a school system and a set of companies. And it really was touted in a lot of magazines as being sort of the prototype for how STEM should be managed at the school level. I check on that school. It's now been since 1994. I go online, I check on the rankings of that school every single year. And I am extremely proud that that school is still one of the top 10 schools in STEM in its state. I want that to always be the case.